Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom, and this is Mackenzie. We're here with the Marketing Club, and we're really excited to talk to you guys about what it's like to be on the Marketing Club and what it's like to be a marketer at Fuqua. Um, as I mentioned, my name's Tom. I'm originally from Boston. Prior to Fuqua, I worked at Accenture doing technology consulting. And coming into Fuqua, I was really interested in getting a CPG marketing experience. I had this really strong curiosity around marketing and decided to go work at the Hershey Company over the summer. I had a great time, tasted a lot of chocolate for sure. And now that we're going into our second year, I've decided to actually go work in the tech industry at Dell. And happy to talk more about both of those experiences if you guys have any questions.
And as Tom mentioned, I'm Mackenzie. I am from Richmond, Virginia. And prior to Fuqua, I was working at a consumer insights agency called Collage Group, which is focused on the Hispanic segment in America. And wanted to come to Fuqua because I knew I wanted to do CPG marketing. I interned this summer at Mars in their pet care division in Nashville, Tennessee. And I absolutely loved my experience there. So also happy to speak about Mars and that opportunity. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about the Marketing Club. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to be typing them in as we go. We're probably going to save them and answer them at the end. So we wanted to just start by telling you what we feel the purpose of the Marketing Club is. It's really threefold. The first thing that we do as a marketing club is we help first years prepare for their interviews. So Tom's going to talk a little bit more about that. We also work with both first years and second years to extend the learning outside of the classroom. So really helping us all stay on top of marketing trends and learn from each other and from outside speakers. Lastly, our third purpose is that we connect our sponsors with our students, helping to build those relationships as sponsors are looking for interns and full-time candidates, and obviously as first years are looking for, or all students are looking for opportunities. So again, the first year interview prep, helping students learn outside the classroom, and then third, helping connect our sponsors and our students.
Yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit deeper into one of the points Mackenzie mentioned around first year interview prep and just give you a little highlight into what happens when you get on campus. If you've talked to other folks that have attended Fuqua or other business schools, you'll tend to hear that the fall is very overwhelming. There's a lot of activity that happens starting in August all the way through December. And one of those key activities is interview prep. To give you a sense of just the overall schedule that marketers and other students tend to go through, September tends to be a time of information download. You're going to all these different types of events. You're trying to figure out what you want to do. Early October, a lot of companies will come on campus, which we'll talk more about, and you'll get to know all these different companies in different ways, shapes, and forms. And then most of November, you're submitting resumes, filling out applications, and really getting ready for interviews. From the context of the Marketing Club, there's really two types of interviews that we're thinking about. There's on-campus interviewing, which happens mostly in January, and then there's off-campus, which will be spread across the entire spring. Our main program that helps with interview prep is called MILE, and essentially what it is it's a series of sessions over the course of the fall. There's three in particular on Saturdays, and they focus on different parts of the marketing interview. Our first session tends to be focused on tell me about yourself. There's a lot of focus at Fuqua just to get people comfortable with that introduction. Where are you from? What's your background? Emphasizing why you made choices that you did to come to business school and why you're making the choice to go into marketing. The second and third session gets a little bit deeper into the marketing case itself. And that's a focal point of the interview. And it's going to vary depending on the company. But the essence is really two types of questions. If you're a marketer and you notice that sales are down or share is down or share is up, like being able to diagnose the problem, understand why it's happening, and provide recommendations back to the company real time during that interview process. The second type of question that is covered is launching a new product. So as you launch a new product, what are some simple frameworks to think about to help you answer that question and help articulate how you're going to price the product? What distribution channels are you going to push the product through? Like, what is the product itself? What's the packaging going to be like? And so forth. So that's really the second question that gets peeled back during our mile sessions. I would say throughout the entire fall, as we're interacting with Mile, there's another party that's involved, which is the Career Management Center. They do play a critical role when it comes to interview prep as well, and we complement them really well. So they're going to focus more generally on the whole student body, and they're going to provide basic interview tips and guidelines along the way. And then us as a marketing club will supplement that and provide more tailored feedback based off all of our second year experience going through the interview process last year. I would say the third critical area as it relates to preparing for interviews is just the team Fuqua spirit. There's a lot of effort and activity that goes into first years interacting with second years, especially if you're on the marketing club. Our club is about 30 people within our cabinet, and we support and represent over 200 people throughout Fuqua that have interest in marketing. And there's just a vibe that goes around the school where first years and second years spend a lot of time together in the fall doing coffee chats. So a first year would reach out to me and say, hey, how was your summer at Hershey? And I would share that experience with them. What did I like? What did I learn? Why did I decide to go there? And then ultimately, there's a lot of activity in November, December around mock interviews. So us as second years, and especially being on the club, we'll meet with a lot of first years and run them through questions that we got last year to make sure that they're fully prepared for their interviews in January, as well as throughout the rest of the spring. So there's just a strong team camaraderie across our marketing club, but also across Fuqua in and of itself, which we think was especially positive for both of us as we went through the interview process last year. And it looks like we're starting to get questions. I know YouTube was having some difficulties yesterday, so we'll answer questions as they're coming in.
Yeah. And just to build on that, I think the last point in thinking about the interview prep is how we as a club work with our Career Center. Our Career Center is absolutely fantastic. We have members in the Career Center who have worked in brand management and have worked in marketing in the past. So we work very closely with them to make sure that the efforts and the frameworks that we're teaching are building on what they are providing and vice versa. And then they offer additional practice for the students, especially over winter break when second years are often traveling. They will be holding mock interviews and kind of stepping in, helping out a little bit more heavy-handed. So again, it's a very complementary effort, and we work closely with them in parallel. We both recognize that the other is very invaluable to first years especially, and so it's a great relationship that we build with them. So, we'll have some more questions. I know somebody asked what types of speakers come in, and that actually leads perfectly into our next section, which is how the marketing club helps both first years and second years learn outside of the classroom. So the biggest initiative that we have, and something that I think really sets Fuqua apart from some other schools, is an initiative called Marketing Mondays. So every Monday, we have a classroom reserved at lunchtime, and we bring in a different speaker, or we have an opportunity for second years to kind of share experiences with first years, some tailored, focused conversation so that both first years and second years are learning. So for example, in the first half of this year, we had a panel of second years talking about their summer experiences in marketing, and we made it very purposeful that it was cross-industry. So it was tech, healthcare, medical device, spanned to CPG and to retail. So it was a great variety, and it gave the first years an opportunity to see what marketing looks like across industries, and really compare them side by side in a condensed way. So that's just one example of something that we had in fall 1. In fall 2, we have a great set of speakers lined up. The first speaker after fall break is a man named Greg Kilstrom. He wrote a book on branding, and so he's going to speak to us about how big brands can connect directly with consumers, which is of growing importance and something that we all need to be paying attention to more as marketers. We also have speakers like the CEO and founder of the Mom Complex, who the Mom Complex is an ad agency and innovation agency catered to moms. And so she's going to talk about her experience launching that company and also talk about consumer insights that we all need to understand in appealing to moms. We also have speakers from Tyson Foods, SAP, Deloitte, great opportunities to learn from industry experts and leaders, help us all stay on top of marketing trends, and then help elevate the learning outside of the classroom. And what's fantastic too is we have so many speakers who reach out to professors who want to engage with them, and the professors' schedules often, or their classrooms, calendar are pretty booked. And we have a fantastic relationship with our professors. They often send us speakers who, they can't fit into their calendar, but would be fantastic opportunities for the club. So we work very closely with our professors. We also have different series where we learn from our professors outside of the classroom. For example, Professor Christine Moorman leads the Marketing Journal and the CMO survey. And she's going to be leading a workshop for us this year where we digest some of the content in the CMO survey and have different brainstorming and workshops about what the trends mean and how we might apply them as marketers. So again, opportunities outside of the classroom, leveraging all of the experts and connections that we as a club have and that our professors have. Some other ways that both first years and second years learn outside the classroom include what we call weekend cities. Every year, a group of students travel up to New York, and usually it's New York, it can be other locations, to visit different companies in a condensed week. So this year they're going to places like Pepperidge Farm and WeWork and Google and Co-Collective, a couple of different CPG companies, really to get a sense of what it's like to work in that environment and also to have the opportunity to network and to learn from industry experts who might not be able to travel to Durham. So for example, Pepperidge Farm always does a fantastic presentation about food chemistry, which I know I personally thoroughly enjoyed last year, and it was a lot of fun. So that's another opportunity of how we learn. We also have what's called the Brand Challenge, where every different teams of first years, 4 to 5 people, will represent a brand and bring it to life at a Fuqua Friday. If you haven't heard of Fuqua Friday, it's every Friday. School provides dinner and drinks, and it's a great opportunity to just hang out with friends in a casual way. And so we have about between 5 to 10 different booths, and first years are bringing to life a product and engaging with the community, and it's a ton of fun. And last year, we both represented a product and then had the opportunity to speak with the brand manager from Coca-Cola and work with him and get his feedback and talk to him about the segment and the target audience and the challenges that his team was actually facing in real time. So it was a great opportunity to learn kind of by doing. And then lastly, we do have case competitions. We hold one internally, and then the winner will go to the Elite 8 case competition, and the second place is probably going to go to some other competitions around the country. So again, lots of opportunities for both second years and first years to learn outside of the classroom and to stay on top of industry trends and innovations. And then, so the last thing to talk about, we talked about how we help help first years learn interviewing frameworks, how students learn outside of the classroom, and then Tom's going to talk about sponsors a little bit more.
Thanks, Mackenzie. And the case competition that Mackenzie mentioned is an outstanding experience. I had an opportunity to participate in it last year. And myself and a group went up to Minnesota to compete in the Elite 8. and just one of the cool experiences to get to build relationships with others in the marketing club, along with all those other areas that Mackenzie talked about. In terms of sponsors, this is an area that we're extremely proud of. It keeps the marketing club running. So thank you to all of our sponsors. In terms of who the sponsors are, our diamond sponsor this year is General Motors. They've invested a lot of time and energy into Fuqua. They've just been outstanding. Our gold sponsors are Hershey and Dell. And then we have a bunch of silver sponsors, which involve P&G, Clorox, Coca-Cola, Frito-Lay, Mars Pet Care, Mars Chocolate, Kraft Heinz, Tyson Foods. A lot of those are CPG companies, but we are putting a lot of focus on broadening ourselves beyond just a CPG focus. Dell is a new sponsor this year, is investing a lot of time and energy. Like I said, General Motors is also a big sponsor. One of the ways that the sponsors engage is through our marketing symposium, which is our flagship event that happens in September, which is when all the symposiums are. There's a finance symposium, a consulting symposium. Ours this year was talking about innovation and how do brands expand by leveraging innovation. As I mentioned, General Motors was our diamond sponsor this year. They actually brought a Camaro down and parked it outside of Fuqua for students to get visibility to, and that was pretty cool experience.
It was a lot of fun. It looked like a Hot Wheels car.
I didn't get to drive it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's our marketing symposium. It's an all-day event. It's the first event where students get exposure to these companies and get to learn more about marketing. The next type of event is what we call corporate education. That happens typically in the November timeframe, where all these sponsors come back to campus for different types of events and educate our marketing club students on different aspects of marketing. So for example, Hershey will come down and do a seasonal marketing event where they'll teach you how to market across the different seasons. Last year, Zillow came and did a focused session on Facebook advertising. Another cool one is Frito. So Frito will come down and take us to Dollar General and Kroger and all these different retail channels and show us how Frito displays its chips on the shelves. So there's all these cool opportunities where sponsors do come back to campus and teach us more about what's happening in the marketing space and how to be best prepared for your interviews as well as your internships. Another cool event P&G hosts is an interactive case study. So students will learn what it's like to be a brand manager. I think last year they gave us a case on Olay, and they said, we have a new competitor that's coming out that's going to put pressure on Olay. What do you do? And we broke into teams and we brainstormed, and then we pitched it back to the P&G representatives. So there's all these cool events that our sponsors engage with Fuqua on throughout the fall to help educate us more on marketing. It's particularly good for someone like me who came from consulting. I really didn't have a marketing background at all. So there's all these types of events, both internally without sponsors, but also with our external sponsors that help students get really prepared to enter into the marketing functional space. It looks like questions are starting to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Yeah, well, let's just take a look here.
Yeah, keep them coming. I know I saw one question, and just kind of building off of what Tom said, he came from a non-marketing background, and so some of these learning opportunities on campus, like the brand challenge and these case competitions, help you build up your marketing knowledge so that you're really prepared for your interviews and for your internships. Another thing that we do is that, like Tom mentioned earlier, the interview prep series called Mile will help you a lot. And what's fantastic, I think, about business school in general is that recruiters aren't necessarily looking for candidates who have marketing backgrounds. They're interested in people who have a diverse set of experiences, and they understand that a lot of people come to business school to maybe pivot their careers. And so one of the things that the marketing club does is we help you answer those questions that are going to come up. So for example, for a marketing company, they are probably always going to ask you, tell me about a time you dealt with an ambiguous situation. So whether or not you have a marketing background, you've definitely dealt with an ambiguous situation, and these companies just want to see how you responded to that and want to make sure that in their marketing organization you'll be able to respond in a professional manner. So absolutely possible for career switchers to come into marketing from different industries. What other questions have we gotten?
So we'll just hit a couple of these. You can vote on questions as a FYI, and that'll bring it to the top of the list here to make sure we get to your question. So for example, one was, how do I get, it just disappeared, but how do I get more involved with alumni? So my recommendation would be to a couple things. You can look on LinkedIn and search for Fuqua, and you can potentially find folks that work at specific companies. If you want to talk to any of us that are here at Fuqua, the best bet is to go to our website and submit the contact us form, and we'll get an email notification and we'll reach out, and we're happy to talk.
Another question that somebody asked is kind of two different questions, combining them. Does the marketing club collaborate with other groups on campus? And then somebody asked whether there are opportunities to recruit with different sports and entertainment companies. And so the answer to both of those is yes. What is great is that we have other clubs like the Media, Entertainment, and Sports Club. We have the Retail and Luxury Brands Club, even the Tech Club and the Healthcare Club. There's all this overlap with marketing, and we definitely recognize that. We actually have a team that is responsible for cross-industry collaboration and communication. And we try to tailor our activities so that they can work with these other opportunities. So for example, when we go to New York for Week in Cities, students can go to our event one day, they can go to the Media, Entertainment, and Sports Club the next day, maybe the Retail and Luxury Club the day before. All in New York. And so you have the opportunity to kind of create your own experience across the clubs depending on what you are most interested in and focused on. These other clubs like Tech Club also have interview prep series. And so a lot of students will come to both ours and the Tech Club or the Healthcare Club, and then they create their own experience that is very tailored to tech marketing or healthcare marketing. So we definitely work with these other clubs, coordinate with them, and there are lots of opportunities to recruit outside of CPG or outside of the sponsors that Tom mentioned.
Along those same lines, there was a question here about interacting with startups in the Research Triangle area, and does the club provide any support in coordinating those types of interactions? The club itself, actually, we don't get super involved in the startup scene. However, I can attest that Fuqua in and of itself has a strong presence in the Research Triangle area. So separate from the marketing club, I participated in P4E, which stands for Program for Entrepreneurs, during my first year last year. And Fuqua and Big Duke has an innovation and entrepreneurship center that's located a little bit off campus, but it's an outstanding center. The gentleman that runs it is extremely high energy and has more contacts than you can imagine. So there is a extremely strong presence of entrepreneurship at Fuqua that I can attest to. And even though the marketing club itself doesn't facilitate that interaction, trust me, there is plenty of people here that we could connect you with to have those types of conversations.
Yeah, and somebody's asking about if there are opportunities to learn about the latest digital marketing trends. Absolutely, that's part of kind of the Marketing Monday experience where we bring in different speakers and again, collaborate with professors to highlight people who are experts in the field. So we have, we're going to have somebody speak about Amazon and kind of his experience working there and the digital trends from the retail perspective. We have some recorded webinars from my previous company with consumer insights about how different consumers engage online. So a lot of opportunities there, definitely part of kind of that outside of the classroom learning experience that we mentioned earlier. And then it seems like somebody asked about concentrations. I think, when you're in business school, at least from my perspective, concentrations don't seem to matter as much as they did in undergrad. So in undergrad, if you were a marketing major or if you were, a public policy major, it dictated a lot more of your coursework and what you wanted to do. I personally, coming from a marketing background, don't really mind if I have a marketing concentration or not. I just want to take the classes that are going to excel my learning and that are not going to be duplicative of my previous experiences. So I might end up with a marketing concentration or I might not, just depending on the classes that I think are going to give me the best experience. And so again, concentrations I think can be helpful, but it's more about the overall experience rather than the individual concentrations.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, if you think about like what type, the concentration is essentially a focus on specific types of classes, as Mackenzie mentioned. And if we take that one step further, whatever classes you end up taking will end up supporting whatever marketing path you tend to go down after school. So I can give a little bit of a variety of the types of marketing roles that students will tend to go into and how those vary. So for example, there's the typical, your generic or typical CPG brand manager. And the types of roles that that type of role, you go into it as a associate brand manager, and that's at like Coca-Cola, Hershey, Clorox, Frito-Lay, your consumer product goods companies. And that path, you're essentially, when you become a brand manager, which is 3 to 5 years after graduation, you're in charge of that brand. So when I worked at Hershey, the brand manager for Reese's had a total accountability for Reese's. And what that means is they call the shots as it relates to that brand. They're accountable to sales. So they're working with their advertising agencies, they're working with R&D, they're working with innovation teams, they're working with operations, they're working with all these different cross-functional teams and based off how the business is doing. So they're trying to figure out which products they need to launch in the future. They're figuring out how are their current products performing. So they're looking at numbers week over week and figuring out how sales are doing across the board. So that's your typical like brand management role, and both of those concentrations have classes that support that type of role. If you go down the tech path, there's a variety of different marketing roles that could exist in the tech space. You'll hear the terms product management, you'll hear the terms product marketing. Some roles will be heavily product focused. So for example, if you're working on a tech product, you're responsible for interacting between the customers themselves, the engineers, and the sales teams. And you have accountability for like what features and functionality exists with that product. Most of the time at a tech company, there'll be separate groups that will interact with agencies and do the overall marketing and advertising. And your focus as a marketer is strictly in what does the product do? How does it perform? So it's much more, I would say, product centric versus having accountability for the end-to-end spectrum. As a marketer in a tech company, you do have that flexibility to move around into those different roles, but it's slightly different than that role that I described from a CPG perspective. Also, in both types of companies, there could be marketing strategy roles. So you're focused on what's happening in 5 to 10 years down the line. And that's probably more market analysis, competitor analysis, game theory, where should we invest our time and energy versus the day-to-day activity of managing a business. So marketing can take you in all these different directions, and the concentrations, essentially, Fuqua creates those to help, like as Mackenzie said, put some shape around what types of classes might be of interest to you if you have specific focus areas across that spectrum. So hopefully that adds a little bit more context. I know that there was another question in here about like what types of leadership activities does the club provide to first years? I would say the club provides a variety of leadership both for first years and for second years. So I'll kind of take you through the journey. Right now, our club has about 20 or so first years and about 12 second years. So
the cabinet.
The cabinet itself, yeah. The club
overall
has
a lot more.
Has like 100 plus.
Yeah.
But the cabinet basically is responsible for executing everything that we just described earlier today. And what it looks like from a first year, there's a variety of different roles. Like I said, there's 20 different individuals helping right now. I'll just give a couple offhand. So 2 people are helping support Weekend Cities. So they're completely in charge of bringing 20 to 30 marketing club students up to New York City and coordinating with all those different companies to execute all the logistics around taking people to another city and showing them around to all these companies. There's another individual who's responsible for blogging. So they're going to write a couple blogs for the club over the course of the year to help highlight the marketing club out to external students that are interested in attending. There's somebody that's responsible for our newsletter. So they write the newsletter that we send out to students every week, giving them information about the club and where they can get involved. So I would say most of the activity as a first year could either be supporting second years or actually having full ownership yourself. And then I think as you move into second year, obviously Mackenzie and I are the co-presidents. I think that provides an outstanding opportunity for leadership. We are having conversations all the time of how can we most effectively manage the team? How do we design the organization? Like, do we need this role? Do we need this role? How do these roles interact? How do we as a partnership interact with each other? So you're learning about the tangibles of like organizational design, but also the intangibles of human behavior and how you communicate with each other. How do you delegate work? What if somebody isn't doing something that we need to be done? Or moving the club in the right direction? How do we have those conversations? So there's a lot of cool opportunities to gain leadership experience as both a first year and a second year. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, just transformational opportunities. Fuqua's big on, this is a transformational experience, not a transactional experience. And these opportunities, like being involved in a club, really are transformational and give additional opportunities to get feedback from a variety of people on your leadership style, your communication style, and then also just your ability to execute and your ability to work with sponsors and external relations and things like that. So again, both first years have the opportunity to jump straight into some different leadership roles. Second years are carrying a little bit more of the weight, but are happy to do so, given that first year is particularly busy, and it's a great opportunity to get involved in Team Fuqua.
Another question here: does the club travel for client projects and/or competitions? So we talked a little bit about this. I'm happy to go a little bit more detailed. So the club itself, as it relates to client projects, doesn't necessarily get involved. However, there is a program at Duke called FCCP, which is Fuqua Client Consulting Practicum, I think. But it's essentially a consulting engagement. Had a lot of classmates that did it last year. You get a project in the, I think, November to January timeframe, and you work on that project throughout the entire spring. And there's marketing projects within the scope of those types of engagements. Mm-hmm. There was one that reached out to us. An individual that works at Nike is looking to grow the brand, a particular brand that they're working on. So that's a really cool experience that we got. And the marketing club helps to promote those. In terms of the case competitions, we mentioned it a little bit. Some more specifics. So we actually hosted our internal case competition last week, which was sponsored by General Motors. The case was given to students on a Friday, and they had a week to execute the case. It was teams of 4 to 5 people. They presented back to GM their recommendations, which was a 20-minute presentation followed by 10 minutes of Q&A. Mm-hmm. And then, as Mackenzie mentioned, the winners of that case competition will get sent to Minnesota to participate in the Carlson School of Management Brand Challenge, which I participated in last year. We got the case there on, I think it was a Thursday night, and then we get 48 hours straight to execute this case, which was sponsored by another company. So that was just a really cool experience. You're working around the clock, get to present in front of a group of individuals. So yeah, that's just a little bit more info on client projects as well as case competitions.
Mm-hmm. And just, to build off of that, again, we have fantastic relations with our professors, and many of them are conducting outside research when they're not teaching, and they have an extensive network. And so there's always opportunities to tap into additional projects or mentored studies if that's of interest to you. Not something that we necessarily do all together as a club, but there are plenty of those opportunities if that's something that you really want to put your time into. So I think that's all the questions we have, right, Tom? Any more? I think we've addressed. Yeah.
It looks like there's no other new questions coming in. We'll give it a minute here and chit chat about random stuff. If you have other questions, feel free to submit them right now, and we're happy to answer them. If you don't have questions, just a reminder, the best way to get in contact with the Marketing Club is through our website. You can Google it. It's like DukeMBAMarketingClub.com, I believe. So you'll find our website. There's a contact us form where you can reach out to us and talk to other individuals. As we mentioned earlier in the call, my name is Tom. Worked at Hershey over the summer, going back into tech to work at Dell in a marketing role next summer.
And I'm Mackenzie. I worked at Mars in their pet care office. And yeah, absolutely loved it. So really happy that we had this opportunity here to speak with you all, to, answer your questions. If you have any other questions, just reach out. You can also talk to the admissions team. They're fantastic and have a lot of answers as well. So hopefully we will see you guys on campus for interviews and for future events at Fuqua and as students. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.